Hi, everybody. Steve Wilder, president of Sorensen Wilder and Associates here for you. Kind of a hot topic and a very dear friend and colleague joining us today, certainly a subject matter expert, a young lady by the name of Deb Fitzpatrick. Deb and I have been friends for a lot of years. She's kind of a remarkable person as you listen to her and hear her credentials. And I'm not going to steal too much of her thunder, but just as an overview, Deb is a women's self-defense instructor. She is a certified fitness instructor. She is an advanced, and Deb, I'll let you talk about this. She's an advanced martial artist. And she's also a women's power lifter. So certainly an athlete through and through. But somebody who's done a lot of training. I'm really excited, Deb, to have you joining us today. This is a hot topic, and I think people sometimes get the mindset that they have to hope for the best and don't realize that, yeah, there's vulnerabilities out there that they face, but sometimes people do things to create the vulnerabilities themselves. And that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit later about women, because that certainly is a hot topic, but it's not really gender specific. There are a lot of people who work in the field, a lot of people in sales, a lot of people in service work. Gender doesn't matter, but all these people do things to put themselves in harm's way. Would I be saying that right?
Oh, of course, you'd be correct. Yeah, I work from home usually, or else I travel, and I've traveled all over the country for my job for the last 4 years. But there are several men in my, same capacity that travel a lot too, and don't have any training in any sort of martial arts or anything else. There's a couple of them that conceal carry, but other than that, they don't have any way to, defend themselves. And you can't always carry your gun. You kind of need to be aware of your surroundings and things like that. But yeah, it's not just women, although women tend to be, obviously a target because they're usually smaller or they think we're not very strong. So yeah, that's definitely a thing, especially coming off of COVID and everybody was home for so long. So now we're all hitting the road again and traveling a lot, and we might be, forgetting a lot of those things that we used to do maybe, or we used to, pay more attention. And now we're more focused on our phones and different things like that. And we're maybe, aren't thinking back to all those things that we need to be paying attention to since we're getting back on the road again.
And you and I have talked about this in the past in conversation, but you mentioned concealed carry a few minutes ago, and I was doing I was doing an active shooter program earlier this week in Pennsylvania, and the question about concealed carry in the workplace came up. And one of the things I always try to remind people, you can go through training and become very proficient with a firearm, but being trained to use the firearm, which I will refer to as an instrument in this case, being trained to use that firearm or that instrument is fantastic. But you also have to have the mental capacity to be able to point that firearm at another human being and pull the trigger and very likely take their life or end their life. And the training programs don't teach that part of it. So, I know so many people with concealed carry, myself included, and I know you do as well. But the training that we go through teaches us how to use the weapon. It doesn't teach us how to prepare ourselves mentally for that. So even with legal concealed carry in all 50 states now in one capacity or another, the fear factor, or what do I want to say, the apprehension of using the firearm can become
Right.
such a critical issue that it can be a detriment. Would you agree?
Right. You have the gun and you feel like you're safer that way, but to actually, in my case, I carry it in my purse. By the time I would get it out of my purse and be able to use it for one thing, it, things already might be escalated to the point of it's too late. And the other thing is yeah, do you really have the wherewithal to point that at someone and actually pull the trigger? And another point with that is like the company that I work with is a big national insurance company. Their rules are pretty specific on not wanting any of us to carry our weapon when we're working. And we've gone back and forth about that with them a little bit, and but that's still an issue too, that they have right in our rules for um different, our company vehicle and different things like that, that we're not supposed to be carrying a weapon in there. So then that takes that out of play. Then I no longer am technically supposed to carry my gun for work. So that leaves me with what I have available.
Right. What are some of the common mistakes that we see women in the field making that puts them in a position or creates a vulnerability, if you will?
Well, just the women that I see, like I said, first of all, we're not used to traveling. So we're getting back on the road. You're trying to remember everything that you have to take, maybe when you're going somewhere, whether you're just going, if you're driving or if you're flying and getting a car or whatever. But, and you and I have discussed this multiple times that everyone's looking at their phone way too much instead of being, paying attention to their surroundings. There's just no way to, you and I have both done it. Everyone probably on this call has done it where you look down at your phone for a minute. Maybe you're, maybe you are driving, or maybe you're on another web call for work. And if I get a text from one of my kids and I look down at it for a second, you lose that second and you can't get that back. And so there's a lot of people that are looking at their phone and not paying attention. The other thing that a lot of women do that they should do, and I know that they don't, is they need to have someone that knows where they're going and what they're doing. Even if it's another work friend, I have several work friends that are women that, we get together and we'll say, hey, I'm going here today and I'll be there about this time, that kind of thing, so that someone needs to know where you're at or where you're going, when you're going to be there roughly, something like that. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but just somebody to check in on you, that knows where you're going, knows that you got there on time or safely. Maybe if you got to your hotel room and you're in your room safe for the night, things like that. So it may sound silly and you may not want to do it, but it is something that, it keeps people aware of where you're at and everyone knows then that you're safe.
You hit such a great point there because I was in downtown Philadelphia not too long ago, and I can remember being, and I had a rental car. I can remember being at a stoplight, and I'm watching the people, and so many people, and I'm again in this case it was both men and women, but they're walking down the street, and as they're walking, their focal point is their phone. They have no idea
Absolutely.
what's going on around them.
Right. They wouldn't know if the person came up or if there's even a policeman nearby or, anything like that. And it's terrible. They say not to text and drive, but texting and walking is just as bad, and just not paying attention. And we see this so much more these days with our phones and with especially the younger people too, but everybody's doing it. And you and I have talked about this before. We did that women's safety class, and that was one of the big slides that we put on there, was there's constantly people just watching their phone instead of looking around at what's going on and just being aware. That's the biggest part of it. Even in martial arts, that's what they teach you first and foremost. Even these young children that we used to teach, you just teach them to be aware, and that's a big factor as far as being able to defend yourself or get out of a situation that doesn't escalate, and you're able to get away because you're paying attention to maybe where the nearest door is, or maybe where the nearest stairs are, or something like that. And it's just amazing that people don't do that, and people that especially aren't trained don't think of that kind of thing.
That's a great point. Great point. And you mentioned the class that we did a while back, and friends, we're always transparent in our programs here. We offer a program called Prepared Not Scared, which is a program designed specifically for people who work out in the field. And Deb is one of the primary instructors in that program. So when she talks about our programs, or we talk a lot about this kind of stuff, that's where that's coming from. It's a program that we're really proud of, and I've always been so appreciative to have Deb as one of our instructors in that program, because I'm not ignorant to the fact women would rather learn from women, and you can relate to them, and you can understand their mindset, and that's always been a big asset in the program. What are some things that these folks working on the field, these women working on the field, Deb, what are some things they can do to help lessen those vulnerabilities that you mentioned, other than
Well,
obviously leave the phone off and put it in your purse and ignore it?
right. I mean, just paying attention, like I said, keeping your keys handy. Several times during my work, I've had to fly. So, you park at the airport, you park at the um, station or whatever to go wherever you need to go. And then when you get there, if you've got a rental car, things like that, you need to get in the rental car. You need to lock the doors, get familiar with all of it. I know I've done that before, where you get in the rental car and you just take off. All cars are the same, right? Well, they're
Sure.
not. And, the locks are different. Everything in the car is different depending on what you get in. So you need to get familiar with your surroundings, even if it is the rental car, where you park, remember where you park, things like that. Lock the door, make sure your hotel door shuts and locks if you're going into a hotel. I had one the other day that was real sticky and the door wouldn't quite shut every time. And, it sounded like it shut when it closed really hard. But, just little things like that that you might not even think about, especially if you're in a hurry and you're trying to lug a suitcase and a backpack and your purse and different things into a room and you're exhausted from a long day. There's still that need to pay attention and need to pay attention to where the exits are, wherever you're at. There's even things where it's how many steps is it to the exit or which direction, because if something happens, you kind of need to know how to get out of there and you need to know in a hurry probably. So um, there's a lot of things like that. Just paying attention to where you're at is just so important. Just having a plan to get out of the room or having a plan to find shelter or find, other people, things like that. And we used to have a saying, it's not quite appropriate for this group, but there was a one of our instructors, and it was have a plan, for making, checking out everybody in the room. And if you can't think of it any other way, you and I have talked about this where you make a game out of it. Maybe, you know, go in a room and figure out, well, what would I do? Or make it like a movie. What would you do if you were in this movie? And how would you react if you had to get out, or if you had to, flip the table to be protected, or different things like that. I mean, you can kind of make it a little bit fun. It's still, it doesn't have to be scary, but you do need to be aware of what's going on around you, where people are, where exits are. Don't sit with your back to the door, things like that, just to kind of keep an eye out for what's going on, and maybe just kind of check out every person that goes by, and just different things like that to I guess if you've got a colleague or something, I have a colleague that I work with, Penny, and we talk all the time about, well, what would you do in this situation? What would you do in that situation? And so it kind of keeps it fresh, but you get someone else's perspective, but you also, you know, you pay attention to things a little bit differently when you're thinking of it that way.
Wow,
And
that's great. I really like that. And I can remember with my background in the fire service years ago, if I was going into a restaurant, for example, if it didn't have a sprinkler system, I wanted a seat near the door.
mhm,
And now I walk in, and regardless if it has a sprinkler system or not, in today's world of active shooters and everything, I still want a seat near the door, but I want to be facing the door so I can see what's coming in it as well. I don't want to be sitting there with my back to the door where I could be blindsided by something and not even have a chance to prepare or plan a response like you talked about. I think that's such a great point. And even in the home, it doesn't have to be in the workplace. I believe firmly that having a plan in your own home, and none of us want to think that when we're in our home, we're in our haven of safety, but you could still there's plenty of cases, and we hear it in the news all the time, of forcible entries into the home. What's your survival plan there? How are you going to protect yourself in your home? You should have a plan for every room in the house. Would you agree?
right. No, absolutely. And I think, as especially for the women, we're so conditioned to, make everybody comfortable or whatever. But in this kind of situation, I would feel like, we taught the kids in class to be aware, but kind of we still had to take care of them and protect them. And so as women, we always want to protect our kids. So maybe think of it, my kids are grown, but I can always still think of them being little. And what would I do if I had to protect them? Then that becomes a bigger issue than just protecting myself. Oh, I'll be okay. But, I've got this small child I've got to take care of, just like when you're on the plane about putting the mask on them. Well, you've got to get them to safety. So that would be a way to think of it. In our class, we talked about just the way, like I said, women tend to want everybody to feel comfortable and to try to make everybody at ease. But if you're going to get on an elevator, and this has happened to me lots of times when I travel, I'm in hotels, I'm in different hotel rooms every night, and you get on the elevator and maybe there's some person that makes you feel uncomfortable. If you're on the elevator and, you know, just get off at that next floor. You don't
Well,
have to, you don't
I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Right. Well, if it comes down to your safety or their hurt feelings and you don't know them, you're probably never going to see them again. But
Exactly.
the idea is, we're so worried about that kind of thing, and you can't be when it's your safety and you're on the road. If somebody gives you a creepy vibe or uncomfortable feeling, you just need to get out of there. Don't get in that Uber or don't get in that elevator. And you don't have to make an excuse, but if you feel like you do, just say, "Oh, forgot something. I'll catch the next one." Just anything like that, or just anything you can think of, have something ready so that when that elevator door opens and there's somebody that you don't want to get on there with, you've got something ready, or just turn around and walk away. They don't know what's going on, just like you don't know what's going on with them. So there's a lot of different things that you can do that you don't have to feel uncomfortable about if it's your safety.
One of the things you said at a program we did a while back, and I don't remember where it was, it doesn't matter, but you said something to the effect of walk like you own the place. And that really hit me because how you carry yourself really sends a message.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one thing that I did for a work conference that we had to do, and we only had a couple minutes. And I just told them, I said, be confident. You have to get from point A to point B in that room, and just throw your shoulders back and walk confidently and look people in the face. Don't look down, don't look at your phone, look them in the face, because look them in the eye, and just get through it. If however you have to think of it in your head, but if you walk with confidence and you give off that vibe, you've got a lot less chance of somebody, trying to mess with you too.
Yeah. I probably know the answer to this question with your background, but what about self-defense classes for women?
Well, I mean, I personally think they're awesome, but
Probably a stupid
you know,
question. Yeah.
well, I mean, I did it because my boys were already doing it, and I wanted to learn as well so that we could do things together and so that we could kind of learn from each other. And it turned out to be a 12 or 15-year journey for me and two of my sons, and it was fantastic. And you you learn so much from everybody that's there. But like I said, one of the things is the awareness, but the self-defense training, it does give you a little more confidence, um, because especially being women, we are smaller, we might not be as strong. There's a lot of things that men can do that are just different. Their arms are longer, they're taller, there's a lot of things like that. But the self-defense training gives you some confidence. It gives you a feeling of, I can do this. I know, I've got some training, but it does take a lot of time. And you're not gonna, if you run into a situation in a parking garage and you think you're gonna just punch somebody and it's gonna look like the movies, it's not.
Right.
Um, but it's definitely helpful. I think it gives you, it just gives you some good background. It gives you the confidence, and it gives you an awareness that you wouldn't have otherwise.
You are a third degree black belt. You have one
Mhm.
son who is a third degree black belt or fourth degree. Which is he?
He's third, and
He's
the other
third
one's a
also.
first.
And the
Mhm.
other son is a first degree black belt. I can only imagine what a quiet evening at home must have looked like in your house. I mentioned earlier, and certainly we're not here to market a program, but I talked about our Prepared Not Scared program, and we really don't get a lot of requests for that. When companies are looking at their safety management program, their security program, and looking at protecting their workforce, is this something that companies should be looking at, do you think, or is this something that individuals should just do on their own? That's something I've wrestled with a lot because, like I said, we get requests for the program, as you well know, but not a lot.
Well, and the other thing about that program, before I kind of answer your question too, was what we did get, which was fantastic, was we got a father that sent his two daughters because they were going away to college.
Yeah, that
And
was
I
great.
think that's a bigger deal, almost, because they're young and they're going away to some place that's probably bigger and totally different than what they're used to. So I felt like that was a fantastic way to get those, girls at least some confidence, and to give them, a little bit of a leg up on something, because they're walking around at night in strange places, and going to class alone and this and that kind of thing. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that can happen on a college campus. As far as my company did give a little bit of a Zoom meeting on traveling safety. It was just kind of an overall travel safety thing. They didn't really go into specifics for women or things like that. And I felt there's like a lot of lot more things they could have done with that. But I also get that they, on a Zoom call, it's a little difficult to kind of get the whole, I guess, feeling about it. I feel like if it's in person, it doesn't hurt for them to offer that, especially they have a lot of women that are traveling. Like I said, we're driving in our vehicles and we're also flying all the time. Um, it would be nice to do that, but I feel like it would be better in person because even if you're not really showing them things to do necessarily, you've got their full attention in a classroom. They get to see how passionate the instructor is. They get to kind of get the feeling of, this is important. This is your safety. This might be your life in certain situations. So if they're going to do it, I think a company, and I definitely think they should if they have a lot of women in the workforce, especially. But I feel like it would be better in person just because they get a better feel for what's going on.
Yeah, and in several of our classes that we do, whether it's myself, Dan, Brad, Glenn, whomever's doing the class, uh, we always talk about the terms education and training and how we use them so interchangeably, but they really are two very different things. We always tell people you educate the mind and you train the hand. You
Correct.
can educate the mind on a Zoom call, but in terms of developing those practical skills, that's not something you can do on a video call or on a conference call, or even sitting watching someone demonstrate. You have to do hands-on, and you have to develop the competencies. It's like anything else. For an individual though who doesn't, or up to this point at least, has not had that opportunity, how can that person react if she's assaulted or attacked out in the field, or is even feeling threatened or accosted in the field?
Well, I mean, you're part of the training, like you talk about, is to try to, somewhat remain calm. I know it's not going to be a calm situation, but you've got to look for things that you can do to get out of that situation. If you were aware and you knew that there was people nearby or things like that that you can get to or that you can yell, things like that are good, but you still need to kind of have the wherewithal about you to be able to focus for just, it's not going to last long, I'm sure, no matter what the situation is, but to focus enough to, like I said, you're not going to punch somebody when you're talking about training. We go through training forever to punch properly. And sometimes it gets really boring, but you're learning how to punch properly and you're learning how to make your body just go to that situation and throw that punch without having to think about it. So, in those situations, you kind of need to have an idea of what you would do and, how you are going to react ahead of time. Whether it's if you got to go to, if you want to throw an elbow at them or however, whatever happens. But um, you've got to have some sort of an idea, maybe a plan, just like we talked about with going in a room or being aware of what's around you. You've got to have a plan, and it might sound silly, but you've got a couple ideas maybe that you're gonna swing your heavy purse at them and then you're going to run away or something like that. You've just got to have some sort of basic reaction that you're going to do depending on the situation. But that's going to, you kind of have to assess every situation, but you can have some sort of an idea of that you're going to. Now, obviously, you're not going to just punch somebody, like I said, and it's not going to be like it is in the movies.
Right.
But you've got a lot of strong, your elbows and your knees and things like that are very strong. Plus, just different things that you might, have with you. If you carry one of those big metal water bottles, we had a couple girls in the class that had those. And I'm like, that's perfect is if you can do that. Um, the issue with carrying other things, like we talked about carrying the gun, or if you want to carry pepper spray, you better know how to use it. And you better have it handy where you can use it before they can take it from you and use it on you.
And
So you have to be
you better
proficient
make
with
sure that you're not spraying into the wind.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot more training involved with some of those things than people think when,
right.
a dad gives his daughter pepper spray. There's some things that you need to know about that and you need to kind of take the time to learn it. Otherwise, yeah, there's situations where you could get that weapon turned back on you. So,
You
um,
mentioned So many things strike him with the purse, the metal water cans, things like that. People don't realize the number of what we call weapons of opportunity
Mhm.
that they are usually surrounded with, but they never think of it that way because that's not what they're intended to be used for. You
Correct.
mentioned a couple, but as I'm sitting here looking at my desk right now, I'm looking at all the different literally weapons of opportunity that I could use to protect myself if I had to. And
Right.
I know that's true in the home, it's true in the car. People just need to start thinking that way. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you need to be aware. Again, it goes back to your awareness, but also, like you said, what you have in the car, what's available. How quickly can you get to it and use it, and how handy are you with it that you're comfortable. I know people that carry baseball bats in their cars, and
Yeah,
that's fine, but just be ready for it to to grab it and be able to use it.
right.
Um,
What about, if somebody's thinking about taking some training, but they're not able to yet, are there any basic, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but are there basic self-defense techniques that you can talk about that somebody could use if they had to until they get formal training?
Well, sure. I mean, if you just think about what your vulnerable parts are, your eyes, ears, throat, things like that, that's what you would go for on someone else. That's what's gonna it's gonna startle them. Plus, it's gonna take them by surprise. But at this point, just like we said, with not worrying about their feelings on the elevator or things like that, this is a point where it doesn't matter what you do, just as long as you can do something to try to at least get them, away from you, or that you can get to safety, or that you can get them to stop. So it might not sound fun, but I mean, if you have to gouge them in the eye, if you have fingernails, use them. If whatever you have available, but you can always just bend things the wrong way. If you can bend their elbow, their fingers, their wrist, things like that can startle them and enough to maybe get them to either let go of you or whatever's going on, or you to get in your car and get the doors locked, things like that. But you can eye gouge, you can there's a lot of vulnerable places on the face and on the neck. So there's a lot of different things that you can, all those things that you were told not to do when you were probably
Right.
fighting with your brother or sister. But that's what you can do at this point, because if it's your life, you need to do that. Obviously, if it's a woman and they want to kick the men in the groin or knee them in the groin, your knees and your elbows are really strong, and they're a good strong bone that you can hit with. If you feel the need to hit someone in the face, the best way is a palm, because if you're not trained to throw a punch properly, you're going to hurt yourself more and probably not hurt them the way you want to. So I would, if you decide, if somebody's up close to you and you need to palm them, maybe up under the chin or something, if you can get them to, like clench their teeth or bite their tongue or knock the wind or something like that, it's going to startle them, and it's going to take them so by surprise that you're fighting back, that I think it will give you that little window of opportunity to get away, or to yell or do whatever. But those kinds of things, there's a lot of, if you just think about it and you think about where you wouldn't want somebody to hit you, that's probably what you could do for them too. So,
I remember, and I think it was the first class we did together in the Prepared Not Scared program, and you were demonstrating, and there was an elderly woman in the class. When I say elderly, I'm saying probably in her mid to upper 70s. And
yeah.
she came in because she feared for her safety sometimes.
Mhm.
And you showed her a technique where instead of punching the offender, the perpetrator, you use the heel of the palm of your hand
Mhm.
and use that as an impact instead in under the bridge of the nose or under the base
Right.
of the nose.
Right. Under the nose or under the chin, or the sides of, like the sides of your jaw. Those are real vulnerable spots. And like I said, if just imagine, I mean, everybody's probably gotten kind of bumped or something, and you bit your teeth really hard. And that's a jarring feeling. And if you can get them somewhere like that, but the nose is a good point. I forgot about that. That's a really good spot to, and you don't have to just, like I said, straight on punch somebody in the nose, but if you can go up under the bridge of their nose like that, you can really control somebody. We did that in class several times, and it's amazing how quick you can gain control of somebody with just pushing that up underneath the bridge of their nose, because that's a really sensitive spot. But yeah, I would definitely use a palm if you're not trained, because that's a straight line from your arm. And so it gives you, there's a lot of strength behind that.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about your wrist so much, because in punching, you're going to worry about your wrist, and your hand needs to be correct, and a lot of different things for you not to hurt yourself. But a palm's a good source to be able to hit somebody with, especially like I said, in the face, upper in the jaw, things like that, nose. Those are good. Those are good starting points, at least, to get somebody. But if you, like I said, if you look at the spots on you that you wouldn't want somebody to hit, your vulnerable spots, that's where you want to try to go with them too.
Wow. What a great way of saying it. I've never heard it presented that way, but great thought. I think where you don't want to be hit, then hit them there. That makes so much sense. Well, Deb, I know we're running out of time. I really, really appreciate you taking time to talk with us today. Any closing thoughts on this?
It's so much about just being aware of what's going on. And if you can't think of any other way, like I said, make a game out of it, make it fun. Do whatever you can, but think about it as protecting yourself, or maybe you have to protect a child or something, that's somebody that's with you, older person that's somebody that's with you, things like that, because that will give you a better sense of, wow, I really need to take care of this person. I really need to, protect them. So what do I need to do that? And your safety is paramount. So whatever you can do to keep yourself safe, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Like I said, if you're not comfortable carrying a weapon, then use what you have around. Like you said, there's so many things that we have available that you just don't look at, your pen or your letter opener like that. You look at it as, as a utility thing, but scissors, anything like that that you can use, just to, and you're not going to do much damage, but at least if you can do something to startle them and to get them off of their game long enough for you to get away, that's the main part. Because that's what we teach the kids all the time is, do a couple things to get away, to run, to get to safety, whatever you can do. And it's not going to take a whole lot. It's going to just kind of knock them off of
Yeah.
their mindset of what they were doing, because you're going to fight back.
Just maim and escape.
Right.
Yep. Deb Fitzpatrick, you're fantastic. I always joke and say I'm not afraid of anything that walks or talks, but talking to you, I'm realizing you might be the exception to that.
My little 5'4" frame. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad I'm on your good side. Thank you so much, Deb, for spending some time with us today. I know our listeners are going to appreciate it. And I know you've got a lot of people thinking as they listen to this about what they can do to protect themselves, what their companies can be doing to train their workers for workplace safety and workplace violence prevention. Guys, this is Steve Wilder. I really appreciate you joining us for another one. We've got a lot more planned for the near future. So as we say all the time, stay safe and stay in touch. See y'all.